Hello, everybody. Um, Nice to see you are all here. Today's webinar will be about how to do a quick installation of OpenSIPS and OpenSIPS control panel with the new version of OpenSIPS 1.8 that will be released to stable today after about 1 month of beta and a lot of bug fixing and making sure that everything is going okay with the new release. Again, as I said, this webinar will focus on the actual process of installing and configuring OpenSIPS, taking you from downloading the actual sources all the way through getting a functional configuration file, and then installing also the OpenSIPS control panel where you can provision your users and you can see your active dialogues and all those things. This webinar will also present something new, because in the OpenSIPS 1.8 we have a new pretty nice addition, I would say, that the menu config tool that allows you to compile and configure OpenSIPS from a graphical interface, so which will make it a lot more easier for OpenSIPS newcomers to get an OpenSIPS platform up and running in a much shorter time, because with OpenSIPS there's a pretty steep learning curve. It used to be pretty hard to get an OpenSIPS platform up and running in a short time, and the menu config edition that we have added in OpenSIPS 1.8 has made things a lot easier. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the installation of the OpenSIPS first. Okay, so let's first go to USR local src and get ourselves a working copy of OpenSIPS. So here we have multiple choices. Okay, so we could download OpenSIPS from the actual source files, or we can download OpenSIPS from the SVN repository. So what these choices have to do? So if you download from the source, from the tar file, you will only get a one-time release, let's say, as opposed to downloading from the SVN sources, where you can just do an SVN update and have the latest version of OpenSIPS, which is pretty cool, because when a new bug or issue appears, you can just go ahead and update your sources and your problems should be gone. Seems my internet connection is down, so I can't seem to get to opensips.org, which is kind of strange. Just a quick confirmation, can anybody hear me, or is everything okay with the webinar? Okay, so I'm back. Sorry for the delay. It seems that there was some issue with the OpenSIPS.org server, so I needed that in order to get the SVN checkout URL. So anyway, I have gotten a hold of it offline, but when OpenSIPS.org goes back online, you will just be able to go to the website, and just go to the download page, and after that you will be presented with all the options, either download via SVN or via a tarball download. So what I'm just going to do is download OpenSIPS via the SVN checkout of the latest branch 1.8. And what this will do is it will go to SourceForge and bring me the latest release of OpenSIPS. The 1.8 that will be released today, as I was saying. Again, sorry for the issue with OpenSIPS.org. So I'll just be waiting now for all the OpenSIPS sources to be downloaded. Okay, I see some questions here. Will you give us all the commands? Yeah, then we will go through all the steps needed for for downloading and installing. So all the commands will be in this tutorial or this webinar. Okay, so now all my OpenSIPS sources have been downloaded. Okay, so I'll just go to the 1.8 folder here that I have downloaded from SourceForge. And first, I'll have to install some prerequisites for the new menu config tool that has been added in OpenSIPS 1.8. Okay, so first of all, I'll be needing to install the following: to install Flex and Bice, and these are needed for the actual OpenSIPS to compile. These are needed for the parsing of the configuration file, and for the newly added menu config tool, that is a graphical tool, we'll be needing the Curses development library. Okay, so I'll just install these. Okay, and after that we can just do make menu config. Wait a little till it compiles. And after that we are greeted with this graphical interface. So what we can do here is, first of all, configure some compile options, that will be used at OpenSIPS compilation time. I'll be showing you these a little bit later. We can compile and install the OpenSIPS sources, clean up the OpenSIPS sources in case we want to radically change some things, and we can even generate some OpenSIPS scripts. So let's first look at the compile options. So here we can configure some compile flags. I'll show you immediately what these are about. So we can either, let's say, choose, for example, if we want to have a private memory, or if we want all memory to be shared, or if we want to have statistics enabled in the OpenSIPS binary, or, for example, if you want to use TCP or TLS, if you want to support SCTP and so on. So, for example, let's say we will want to use TCP and we don't want TLS, so we leave things like they are. Okay. What we can also do here, which is pretty nice, if you remember, in the old OpenSIPS versions, you would have to manually edit the makefile in order to enable certain modules. For example, let's say we'll want to build a platform that will store all our customers, our usernames, in a MySQL database. So what we can do simply is just hit spacebar here. The DB MySQL module will be checked, and it will be included in the compilation of the OpenSIPS. Okay. So I'm just going to go back with the Q key. And what we can also do here is configure the OpenSIPS installation directory. So for example, let's say I want my OpenSIPS to be installed in USR local OpenSIPS_proxy. I just hit enter here. It says the folder exists and is accessible, and all my changes have been done. Then we can just go down and hit save changes. Another nice thing that is being shown here is that upon configuring a newly module to be compiled, we also get the actual module dependencies that we have to install. So for example, for the DB MySQL module, we have here that I must install the MySQL client development files. Okay, so for example, I could just press any key to continue. I can hit Control Z to go to put the menu config tool in the background, and I can just go ahead and install my my dependencies. Oops, sorry, small typo here. So what I'm doing here is installing the MySQL dependency that the menu config tool has told me about. So for example, I can just go back to the menu config tool. Okay, let's say for example I'm done with configuring my compile flags and everything, like my excluding modules. I can just hit Q to go back to the previous menu, and then now I can just compile and install my OpenSIPS. And if I hit enter here, OpenSIPS will begin to compile everything that I have chosen in the interface that I have just shown you. So if we just look at how OpenSIPS compiles here, we'll be seeing that in a moment it will start to compile the DB MySQL module that we have chosen to include in our compilation process. Okay. The compilation usually takes around 2 to 3 minutes, depending on your machine and other things like that. But be patient. OpenSIPS is quite a big software. Okay. Any questions up to this point? So again, I would like to stress the importance of the new menu config tool and how much easier you can accomplish certain tasks with this tool. You do not have to edit files, to manually dig your hands in Makefiles or everything. You can just do all from the interface. I have a question here from Alipay. What executables are created by compile? So, Ali, when OpenSIPS compiles, you will get multiple things. So first of all, you will get the actual OpenSIPS binary, the actual executable that you will be running, which is called OpenSIPS. And on top of that, you will be also getting lots of SO files, which are the OpenSIPS modules. On one hand, you have the default modules that are compiled by default that do not have external dependencies, and on the other hand, you also have shared objects, shared libraries, that are the modules that you have just selected in the menu config interface, the modules that have external dependencies and you have to compile on your own, to select for compilation on your own, because you also have to install their dependencies on your machine. Okay, another question from Ali. In what directories? If you remember, I'll just go back to the menu config interface. When we configured compile time options, we configured here our install prefix. If you see here, the interface shows that the current install prefix is USR local OpenSIPS proxy. Okay, so I'm just gonna close now the menu config and just show you what is in the OpenSIPS proxy folder. Okay, let me just go there. So what we have here are certain folders. Okay, so in etc we usually have the configuration files. Okay, in lib we usually have the modules. Okay, in sbin we have the executable files. So we have OpenSIPS, we have OpenSIPS CTL, and we also have OpenSIPS DB CTL, and so on. Okay, and in share we usually have the documentation. Question from Tusharian, I think. So control panel module is installed, is included in it, or have to install separately? The control panel is an entirely separate application from OpenSIPS. Okay, so we will first proceed with the installation of OpenSIPS, and then we will move on to OpenSIPS control panel. Okay. So I'll just move on and show you how you can further configure OpenSIPS, okay? I'll show you how to create the OpenSIPS database, how to set up an init script, how to choose what configuration file should OpenSIPS use. I'll show you how to generate an OpenSIPS configuration file, okay? So let's take things sequentially. Okay, I'm just gonna go now and show you how to create the OpenSIPS database, okay? So what I have in this machine is just a regular installation of MySQL. You know, it's running here, but I have made no special configurations, just set up a root username and password, okay? So I'm just gonna go to etc, okay, OpenSIPS, and I'll be editing the OpenSIPS ctl-rc file. So, well, this file will be used by some OpenSIPS tools that need to access the database, like, for example, the tool that we will be further using in order to create the OpenSIPS database. So we have some specific parameters that we will need to modify here. So first of all, it's the DB engine variable which will tell this which actual database backend you want to use. For example, here is MySQL. You could also have PGSQL for Postgres, Oracle, and so on, okay? Then you must configure a database host, which in my case is hosted locally, the database name that you want to be created, because we will create a new database. So for example, I will create the database OpenSIPS, the read-write user that OpenSIPS will be using for access to the database, which I'll just again leave for OpenSIPS, and the password for the newly created user, okay? And of course, in order to do all these, to create a new database, to create a new user, and so on, we will also need to have the name of the root user, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and save this, okay? And I'll go back. Again, I'm in the USR local OpenSIPS proxy folder, and I'm just gonna go to sbin, where we have the OpenSIPS dbctl tool. We can use this to just create the database, okay? So we just do OpenSIPS dbctl create. So what this will do, it will go and read the information from OpenSIPS ctl-rc, okay? And it will use this information to create the actual database. So if I hit enter here, it of course asks me for my MySQL root password, and it installs the default core OpenSIPS tables. And after that, I have the option to install various extra tables. For example, I can choose if I want or not to install present related tables, okay? Let's say I do not want presence, or if I want zip trace, carrier route, whatever, you know? So it's up to you to configure this. I'll just again hit no. And at this point, I have my MySQL database set up, okay? So if, for example, if I go here, I have the OpenSIPS database, and if I look inside, I have lots of tables for accounting, for dialog, for dial plan, okay, location, everything. Okay, so at this point we have the database in place. Any questions until up to this point? Okay, if you have questions, feel free to put them in any time, and I'll answer when I have time. Okay, so let's now get to the point where we have to generate our configuration files based on our options, because the newly menu config tools also allows this. You know, you can generate a configuration file from that interface, again, without having to read any documentation, without having to edit any actual text files, you know. So a prerequisite that is needed for generating such configuration files is the M4 application, which comes by default in most Linux distros. For example, it came by default in my Debian here, you know. But if you do not have it, make sure to install it at this point, okay? So we're just gonna go, again, I'm in the sbin folder, and I run the OSIPS config tool here, okay? So what I can do is to generate an OpenSIPS configuration script. I hit enter, and I must now choose what kind of service I want to build upon on my OpenSIPS. Okay, so for example, I have here the option to build a residential script, where I have a couple of customers and I provide certain services to them, okay? Or I can have an OpenSIPS based trunking, okay, where you have some PBXs and some trunks and you route traffic. Or I can even have a simple load balancer, okay, where I choose some destinations and I just load balance the traffic to them. So for an example, I'll be choosing the residential script, okay, and I can now, if I hit enter, I can configure my my desired options, okay. So let's hit enter, and I can configure if I want TLS, TCP, sorry, I just hit space, okay. If I want to authenticate all my users, I again hit the space, okay. If I want a county to DB, it's all that simple, So I also choose dialog, and I also want, for example, to store the status of my registered users into the DB, okay. And I also have lots of options here, and if you notice here down, you will be given a simple description of what that specific option does. For example, this option uses a dial pen module for transformation of local numbers, and so on. So it's just up to you, and it's very simple to generate an OpenSIPS configuration file. Okay, so if I just let's say I've selected all my needed options. Okay, so I'll just hit Q now, and I'll just hit generate a residential script. Okay. So what I have now is it says that it has generated my configuration file, and it has placed it in USR local, OpenSIPS proxy, etc, OpenSIPS residential. Okay, so I have now a working configuration file. So I can just hit Q and I can exit the application entirely. So let's take a minute and go to that folder where it has generated, and if you notice, I have here my generating configuration file. As you have seen, the menu config interface makes things a lot easier for generating configuration files, for getting quickly an OpenSIPS file that has things that you need. But of course, you cannot. You eventually have to edit the files by hand. Just because you have, for example, you have to configure your IPs, okay? For example, where do you want your OpenSIPS to listen, okay? So I'll just enter here my IP of the machine that I am on. As you see, you can spot all the places that you need intervention by this simple customize me notification. Okay, so for example, let's search for customize. Okay, so what I must do, I must change the IPs, I must change the database connection, and that should be about it. Okay, so if you choose a different installation path, like I have done so in the menu config tool, if you remember, I have chosen OpenSIPS to be installed in USR local / OpenSIPS _proxy. I also need to change the M path. This is the folder where OpenSIPS will find all of its modules. Okay, so I'll just have to also enter here OpenSIPS proxy, and this will be the folder where. This needs to be the folder or where my OpenSIPS modules are located. Okay. So if I just hit a paste here, okay, I see all my modules there. So that's the proper M path configured. Okay. So that should be about it, because if you remember, when I configured my database connection, I set my username for connecting to the DB to be OpenSIPS and my passwords to be OpenSIPS RW. So everything else seems just about set. Okay. So just that fast, we are done with editing our configuration file. Okay. So let's now take care of the init script, okay? Because OpenSIPS needs an init script that you can run in order to start and stop your service, okay, or restart it. Okay, so for that we need to go to the back to the sources folder, okay? So, and after that, we'll be going to the packaging folder, okay? And after that, here it depends on what particular system you have installed on your server, okay? So here I have Debian, for example, I have Debian 6, so I'll be going to the Debian folder, okay? So if you have Fedora, just go to Fedora or Gentoo or whatever, okay? And here I have a couple of useful files, sorry. So what I'll be using is OpenSIPS.init. This is the actual init script. So I'll go ahead and copy OpenSIPS.init, okay, in the etc init.d OpenSIPS script, okay? So I've moved it there. Let's of course give it execution rights, okay? And we'll need to edit it slightly, okay? So what you need to edit in this init script is, first of all, it's the path where the actual OpenSIPS executable is located. So if you remember, we installed in USR local OpenSIPS proxy, and after that the actual OpenSIPS binary is in sbin OpenSIPS, okay? So this is our OpenSIPS binary. Let me just copy and paste this over here in the daemon variable, okay? After that, we will be needing some extra configuration. For example, here we have the check fork directive, which is something used solely for debugging platforms. So if you plan to deploy a live platform, just come here and delete these debug notifications, okay? Okay. What also needs to be done is to select our OpenSIPS to use that specific configuration file that we have previously generated, okay? So in order to do that, you have the OpenSIPS -f directive here, okay? And we'll just pass here the OpenSIPS configuration file we have generated. So that's located in USR local, OpenSIPS proxy, etc, OpenSIPS, and OpenSIPS residential, okay? So I'm just gonna copy and paste it over in my init script, okay? Okay. I'm just gonna remove these parts here, okay? Okay. All is cool now. One small thing more to do. If you see here in the Debian, we have this file etc default OpenSIPS, where you can also configure some simple OpenSIPS related parameters, okay? So I'm just gonna now close this init script because we are done with it, and I'll just go to show you the default OpenSIPS parameters, okay? So we must take this OpenSIPS.default file here, okay, and copy it in etc default, okay. Okay, let me go there. I by accident copied it with the wrong name, but let's just move it from OpenSIPS.default to OpenSIPS, okay. So if we edit it, we see we have a couple of options here. It's whether to actually run OpenSIPS or not. For example, you do not want anybody to accidentally start your OpenSIPS until the entire platform is online. The user and group where you want OpenSIPS to run, let's say you want it to run as root because you want it to be able to do certain things. We can also configure the amount of shared memory that OpenSIPS will have and the amount of private memory, okay? And you, of course, can configure if you want your OpenSIPS to dump a core file in case of a crash. Okay, so a core file can usually help developers in tracking bugs, and it will be a very useful thing to have in case you encounter crashes. Okay. Good. So we have OpenSIPS installed. We have OpenSIPS configured, we have the init script. One small thing that we need to do here before we actually start our OpenSIPS, and it's just something for for better logging purposes is to include a new syslog entry for our OpenSIPS, you know. So it would log, for example, in /var/log/opensips.log, you know. So let's first go to our back to our configuration file, just to take a sneak peek here, so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so as you can see here, our OpenSIPS will be logging at the log local 0 facility. Okay, so for example, I can modify here so it logs at log local 1. Sorry. Okay, so it logs at local 1. Okay, so then I'm gonna go to my syslog facility configuration. Okay, so I'll just go down here. Okay, and I just hit for example local 1, everything that wants to log to local 1, to log to /var/log/opensips.log. Okay, and just by doing that and restarting, of course, the rsyslog daemon, we will see all the OpenSIPS messages in this folder. One small thing here that mostly gets people wrong, and it gets people wondering why they see so bad performance from their OpenSIPS, is this small minus here. So what this small minus here will do is set the syslog logging to be in asynchronous mode. So OpenSIPS will not wait for the syslog messages to be propagated to the syslog, you know. So if you do that, if OpenSIPS waits for the syslog, you will be getting very, very poor performance. So just by putting here this very small minus character, you might see pretty good performance bumps, you know. Okay, so let's just restart the rsyslog facility. Okay, we should now have the opensips.log file. Okay, and let's try to run our OpenSIPS daemon. Okay, as I was saying, you can have the in your opensips.log file. We now see the OpenSIPS log, and it seems we have an error, but it's very good that we have one, because you will see how to debug such issues. Because okay, we see here that the URI module does not have a database URL configured. Okay, the errors are usually pretty nice to read if you get the idea of how to do it. So this part here after the error is the module that is having problems, you know, and the message is more than self-explanatory. There is no DB URL configured. Okay, so let's just open our configuration file again, go to the URI module part, you know, and just configure a DB URL for him as well, so he will be happy. Okay, and let our OpenSIPS to start. Okay, so I've just configured the DB URL for the URI module. Okay, and if I do start again, I see that my OpenSIPS has started. Okay, I have it listening on on UDP and also on TCP, as I have configured in my my configuration script. Okay, so at this point I have a proxy, you know, where users can register, where users can make a call, where I get accounting from my proxy and so on. Okay, but it's not that easy to maintain such a platform, you know, because not everybody wants or likes to do everything in the command line. Okay, so what we'll do now is proceed to installing the OpenSIPS control panel and see how this has to be done. Okay, so first of all, I have some questions here, and I'll address them now because we'll further move on to OpenSIPS control panel. If you exit menu config and come back, will it remember your configuration options from Alipay? Well, yeah, this is a very good question, you know. So for example, if I go back to USR local sbin, okay, USR local OpenSIPS proxy, okay, and then sbin, okay, if I run a SIPS config again, it will still have my residential options that I have chosen. So you can at any time go and further enhance your script, you know. You can, for example, add NATing processing with using RTP proxy and fixing the SIP messages and so on. Okay, and if you go to your to your OpenSIPS sources, even more, you know, if you go to your sources and do make menu config here, okay, you still have the same excluded modules and everything. So you can go again and say, okay, hey, I forgot a module. For example, I want also a dial plan module because I want to do some translations, or I want to, for example, I want some Perl because I want to execute some Perl scripts. No, it's okay, everything will be saved, so you can rerun this process from the beginning, okay? Question here from Anthony. Can I make a config for both residential and trunking? You can configure, you can generate as many configuration files as you want, okay? So for example, if I go to OpenSIPS proxy, you know, and that's bin, and then I hit a SIPS config, okay, and I want to generate, for example, trunking scripts, okay, I can do that, why not? You know, I can do call limitation and all those things, and I can generate a trunking script. But it's a matter of, do you really want to run the residential and the trunking OpenSIPS on the same server, you know? So you can just take this script, okay, and just place it on any server that you want, okay, on other OpenSIPs or on the same OpenSIPs, okay, and just run it. That's not an issue, okay. Question from James, will this webinar be online so we can review it? Yeah, this will definitely be posted online so more people can see it and get the hang of the new menu config tool, okay? Question from Vladimir, what if you need to, what you need to install the memory size? It, for example, the server has 4 gigabytes. So, you know, this actually, how much memory does OpenSIPS need, it does not depend on, it mostly depends on what you want to do with it, okay? Because it will need more memory based on the more advanced features that you need. For example, if you want to do a trunking and you have many translation rules, you know, if you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of rules, you will need much more OpenSIPS memory. So it's all about what features you want to offer to your users and how you implement them, okay? Question from Ali, what's the difference between user and group in OpenSIPS CFG and etc default OpenSIPS? I'm not sure I understand this question. So in etc default OpenSIPS, for example, if I go back there for a second, I have here the user and group that I want OpenSIPS to run. So for example, if I do again a PS for OpenSIPS, I see that it is running as the user root, you know. So for example, if I would want to, I could create the user, the actual system user OpenSIPS that belongs to the group of users OpenSIPS, and OpenSIPS would automatically run as that user, okay? Because, for example, maybe you do not trust OpenSIPS to run as root, you know, and you want to run it as another user that has less permissions, okay? So a question from Danny Diaz, is there a table of hardware compared with features for a correct sizing server? No, unfortunately there is no such thing, so it's just a matter of trial and error, okay? So you just have to test it and see it, how it behaves, and if needed, add more memory or configure it differently, okay? There is a section on the OpenSIPS.org's website where we have stress tested OpenSIPS with various configuration scripts, so you can go there and get the basic idea. So for example, if the OpenSIPS.org website is working now for me, okay, seems it's still not working here, but you just go to the performance tests page, you know, and you will see there how OpenSIPS behaves when being run with various scenarios, okay? Okay then, so I'll just go now to the installation of the OpenSIPS control panel. Again, what I have here installed already is a very basic Apache server with little to no modifications, okay? So in order to download the OpenSIPS control panel, we have to go to SourceForge, okay? to OpenSIPS -cp at .sourceforce.net. We go to the download page. We again get this SVN checkout because, as I previously said, we can easier get the latest updates, the latest features, and bug fixes. Okay, so we go here. We just paste here that command, and we say what actual OpenSIPS CP version we want to download. So, for example, I want to download the latest version. I just hit trunk here. I hit an enter, and I wait for my OpenSIPS control panel sources to download. Okay. Okay, so I see now as my control panel files are being downloaded. Okay. So let's just go there. Okay, so what I first need to do is install some dependencies for the OpenSIPS control panel, which is quite a big list as opposed to the OpenSIPS, but there's no other way around. Okay, so first of all, we'll be needing libapache, okay, libapache 2 -mod-php5. Okay, this is of course the PHP module for the Apache. Okay, then we need of course PHP5, the PHP5 CLI, the PHP5 GD, which is a library for processing images. Okay, we will need PHP5 -MySQL for MySQL access in our case. Okay, and we'll be also needing PHP peer. So I just go ahead. Oops, I forgot the install here. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and install all these things. Since my internet connection is not that fast, it should usually take a little bit shorter, but we'll have to be patient. Okay. Again, questions are more than welcome. Okay. Okay, so everything is setting up here now. Okay, and it seems to be done. A question from Alipay. There is no CentOS directory under packaging. Which directory should be used for CentOS? I'm guessing Fedora, but I'm not sure. So you should just try that out and see. I'm not sure if those are compatible with CentOS. We have deployed OpenSIPS on CentOS platforms, and I'm sure one of them will be suiting CentOS in there. Okay. Okay, on top of these things, for OpenSIPS control panel, we'll be also needing some extra stuff. For example, we'll have to install the MDB2 application. This is again for accessing the MySQL database. Okay, this is a general application for database access, and after that we need MDB2 MySQL for our MySQL access. Okay, and I think that's about it. That's about all the external application needed for OpenSIPS control panel. So let's go ahead and actually configuring it for working with our OpenSIPS installation. We should go to config, where we have these files. So first of all, we will need to modify the db.inc.php file. So this is the file that is telling the OpenSIPS control panel where to access the various the database. Okay. So you can configure the driver, be it MySQL, PGSQL for Postgres, etc. The host, the port, you can leave it blank for default. The root, username, and the password, okay, and of course the database name, and that's about it here. So you just be careful to set up your password and host name, okay, and after that we'll be going to the config file and boxes. Here we want to configure all the OpenSIPS machines that you want this control panel instance to control. Okay, first of all, we can choose on which way should the control panel communicate with OpenSIPS. I don't know if you are familiar with the MI interface, but you have various ways of accessing the MI interface. So you can use the RPC protocol, or you can use the regular FIFO protocols, FIFO file. Okay, so for example, if I want my control panel to issue commands and get replies from OpenSIPS from a FIFO file, I can just comment the above line and uncomment this one. Okay, so here I must give the OpenSIPS FIFO file where OpenSIPS is listening for commands. Just a quick notice, this parameter is the same one that must be configured in your OpenSIPS configuration file. So for example, if you go here to etc OpenSIPS and open back our residential script, this is the name that you want to enter there, the FIFO name. Okay? Again, if you have Monit installed on your machine, which I do not have, okay, Monit is a monitoring tool. You can also tell control panel where do you want it to communicate with Monit. So if since I do not have it installed here, I just comment out these parts, okay, and that's about it. Again, if I have here some description, if you want OpenSIPS control panel will show this description up there in the interface, and also the general name of the entire system. For example, if you have a SIP server cluster or a cluster of load balancers, I don't know, whatever. Okay. So right now I have configured my database and MI access for the control panel. So the control panel can now access the database, and it can also communicate with OpenSIPS via DMI. Now we'll have to create the control panel database, or more exactly the control panel table, because the actual table will be located in the OpenSIPS database. Okay, and we'll have to create our first admin username. Okay, so we have a very nice install file here that you may want to look at, okay, because it explains in short what you need to install, and what you need to do. Okay. So, for example, if you want to create the actual table, okay, you can just do this. Okay, so you just take this file, okay, and you just push it into your OpenSIPS database. Sorry. So I'll just be doing MySQL, enter my root, prompt for my password. I want to enter the OpenSIPS control panel table into my OpenSIPS database. Okay. Okay. If you want to take a look at this table, okay, so see how it looks like. This is how it looks like. So it's just the list of root users, okay, and the actual permissions that they have for the control panel. Okay. And I also have to create my first admin username, so I'll just be creating a simple admin and admin password. Okay, so I go to the OpenSIPS database here, okay, and I just paste that relevant part of the install file. So what I'll be doing here is create the admin username with the admin password that has all the privileges. Okay. And that should be it. So if we see here, it's in the /var/www OpenSIPS-CP folder. So again, my local machine is 192.168.219, okay, /OpenSIPS-CP, okay, and the web folder is the one that is holding the actual file. So here, one more thing, of course, after you installed all those things, you want to restart Apache, okay? So do not forget that, as I did, okay? So if you go now to web, you see the web interface. Of course, if you want, you can configure yourself an alias. So for example, you can do like this. You can access the control panel like this, okay? But that's an Apache configurations and out of the scope of this course, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and try to log in with the admin and admin username and password, okay? So I am now logged in, okay? So for example, let me add a couple of new users. Okay, I can add some users. Of course, before I can add a new user, I must create a couple of domains that my OpenSIPS will be responsible for. Okay, so let's create a new domain. In lack of anything else, I'll be adding my IP address here. Okay, so now I have added this domain to my OpenSIPS. Okay, then I just go ahead and create a new username for me. For example, let me create, I don't know, the user test1, okay, with the, I don't know, a random email address. Just get him an alias, for example, a numeric alias, okay, and a simple password for him, okay. So we have now created this test1 username. For example, let me see if we can register right now this actual username. Okay, so I have here an IBeam, so let's configure it. So for example, we have test1 with the same test1, the password I have provisioned, the name, I have to enter here my domain name, and I want all my requests to go to the main proxy. Okay, and if I hit OK and close, you can already see that my phone was able to register with, and thus OpenSIPS is working okay. If we want to look at the, there is nothing in the log file until now because OpenSIPS is not running in full debug. Okay, but if we go to the USR local OpenSIPS proxy sbin, we can run, for example, the OpenSIPS-CTL tool, okay, and tell it to dump all our actively registered users, okay, and this will tell us, okay, you know, test1 is now registered with this contact from the 2.3 address, and it is active in my system. So just that fast, I was able to get an actual platform that I can have users registering to it and making calls. So let's just create an extra user, okay, and try a call between them, right? So I'll be creating the test2 with the test2@test.com email. Let's just give him another alias and some passwords, okay. So right now I have two usernames. Let me go to the IBeam and register this one as well, and we will try to make a call between these users, and hopefully it should work again. So the test2 username and my domain. Okay, I have registered this extra username, okay, and for example I want now to make a call. For example, test1 calls test2. If you see, I have here a call from test1, so everything is going okay. If I go to the dialog tab, it seems I cannot see the call. Okay, what this is due to is because although we have configured in the var vvv OpenSIPS folder, in the config and boxes, we have configured that we want OpenSIPS to communicate, OpenSIPS control panel to communicate with OpenSIPS on this FIFO. Each module can be configured differently, you know. So for example, if you go to config, tools, system, dialog, okay, and local, we can see that we can specify different connections for each module. So I can say, okay, I want my dialogues to be provided through this FIFO or through this server, and I want my I don't know, my active registrations to be seen through another FIFO. Okay, so if I go here and provision this, the correct FIFO here as well in the dialog module, right? And let's say I go to a random page, I try to make the call again, okay? I see the call here that is incoming, you know, and I can see the call here that is in an early call state, okay? So for example, if I answer, okay, I refresh this page, the call is confirmed, okay? So you can see how smooth things can go with the new addition. So what I did here is I just took a simple OpenSIPS. I generated the simple configuration file that can do a lot. You know, just in a minute I generated the configuration file that authenticates my users, that generates accounting, that does everything. So for example, if I go here and close the call, okay, in the interface it will get as deleted, okay, because I no longer have it online, okay. And if things are okay, I should be seeing my newly generated accounting. So let's go ahead and check that out. Okay, so as you can see, I also have accounting for my call, you know. So I have accounting for the invite and the buy events. So everything seems to be working smoothly here. So OpenSIPS with the generated configuration file acts okay. The control panel is going okay. So if you have any questions up to this point. So I see there are no questions. So that would be about it for today's webinar. So I'm hoping you really got the main idea here that with the new additions in OpenSIPS 1.8, you can really speed up the actual deployment of a new platform. And we're hoping that with this new tool addition, you can have newcomers to the OpenSIPS environment that can get a hold of it a whole lot faster, you know. You can just use the tool to generate things, to compile it, to choose various options, etc. Okay? And of course, you saw how to do a complete installation from beginning to end, and we also got it working. So we got a dialog, we got registered users, we got everything, okay? So just out of curiosity, you can see your usernames online here, so you got them both. So I hope you enjoyed it. Quick question here, where do we get the OpenSIPS CP source code? Well, as I have shown you, you just go to the control panel website, OpenSIPS-cp.sourceforce.net, download tab, and you can either download a source tarball, a tar.gz, or you can just get a SVN checkout, as I did, okay? The video for this webinar will be posted shortly, in a day or two, on the OpenSIPS website, on the webinar section. By the way, let me check if the OpenSIPS website is up for me. Nope, still not up. So we'll send an email with the update for this and let everybody know how you can watch this again and watch again and see whatever you want to go through again. Okay. Okay. Some questions here. I suppose we can add more complexity to the files generated to the menu. Well, all the options that you have available are right there. Okay, so you can add, if you want, you can add various options there. For example, I don't know, let me go to here. Sorry. So I don't know, for the load balancer script, these are all the currently available options. But if you want to add extra here, you can just look at how the M4 is done and do it. But it would be easier to just edit the CFG file if you if you know how. Okay, so this is basically just for newcomers to just have a much less steeper learning curve for them, By the way, I've just got a notice that the OpenSIPS.org website is back up. I don't know if that's if it's still not up for me. It seems there is a BGP issue in Europe, so it might be that some of you can access the website, some of you might not. So it's a temporary problem. It will go away soon. Okay. I mean, configure manually the, yes, Danny, you can manually configure the OpenSIP CFG file. So you can just take the configured, the generated configuration file and further edit it, you know. The idea is just to get a much faster working configuration file from the beginning, you know, so you don't have to start with a blank configuration file and add your features. You just take what you have accounting, you have dialog, and just build on top of that. Can you request here, can you please explain the directory structure and executables again? Okay, so my installation folder is here in USR local OpenSIPS proxy. So in etc OpenSIPS, I have my configuration file. So I have my default configuration file here, and I have my generated configuration files here. So, you know, the format is OpenSIPS underscore the type of the configuration file, you know, for example, trunking or residential, and the actual Unix, the actual timestamp, sorry, when the config was generated. So you can easily modify your configuration files without overwriting them. So in the lib folder, you have the actual OpenSIPS modules, okay? The actual shared object libraries that you can use. For example, the domain, whatever, authentication, etc. In the SBin, you have the actual binaries, you know, like the OSIPS config that you can use to generate configuration files, okay? You have the actual OpenSIPS binary, the OpenSIPS CTL, etc. Okay, and then share, you have the documentation pages, the man pages, and you also have, for example, the menu config templates, because you know the templates are just M4 files. That's why you needed to install M4 before actually generating config files. Another question, how soon will this webinar be online? As I has previously said, it will be online in a couple of days, okay? We'll let you know. Can you explain the load balancing script also? Sorry, this is not the scope of this webinar. We'll probably, or we'll make in the future another webinar that will further explain our dynamic routing or load balancing, but this webinar scope was to give you an idea of how you can just install the OpenSIPS and OpenSIPS control panel and have a functional platform in a very, very short time, you know, compared to the previous versions of OpenSIPS where you had to manually dig your hands in the configuration file and all those things, you know. Question here, what's OpenSIPS Unix file? Again, we are really straying off course here. So that is a Unix socket that is used by OpenSIPS, so no need to worry about that, okay? If there are no more questions, I'll end the webinar now. I'll just give you guys a couple of one more minute, you know, if you have final questions. If not, it was a pleasure giving you the tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. Okay then, bye bye.